This is my parable project on Luke chapter 12, verse 16 through 21. And he told them this parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. Then he thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, this is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. Then I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years to come. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get to have what you have stored up for yourself? This is how it will be with those who store up for themselves but are not rich towards God. Jesus tells us this parable in the context of somebody in the crowd asking him to tell his brother to divide the inheritance between them. I want to read this right before the parable. It says, Jesus replies to this by saying, watch out, be on your guard against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. And that's what Jesus is trying to convey here. Life doesn't consist in an abundance of possessions. And then he tells this parable to help emphasize that point. After this parable, he goes on to talk about the ravens and the flowers and how God provides for them and how much more he will provide for us. And it's this call for us as believers and for this man in particular to not worry so much about money, about the things that he has, but to trust in God, who has all things under his care and who can take care of us so easily. It's a call to remember that we are not the ultimate providers for our life, but that God is. And that anything that we have, we are called to steward those things and to use them generously because God has given to us so that we can bless others. One thing of note in this parable as well is that Jesus is telling the parable. And in verse 20, he says, but God said, you fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. This part's really important. I think sometimes we can look at this and say, yeah, that's a potential. But if Jesus is telling us something about God, he knows the Father's heart. He and the Father are one. Jesus is God incarnate, the Word made flesh. And so when Jesus says this is how God will respond, it's not some human guessing how God will respond. It's how God will respond. And so I think with that, it's really important that we take this to heart and that we live this out, that we don't just hoard our wealth, that we don't just seek to continue to amass more and more and more things and money so that we don't have to work or we don't have to trust in the Lord, but that we steward what we have well and we give generously to others. And at the end of the parable, he doesn't say this is for who has a lot. He says this is for who stores up for himself, but is not rich towards God. And so it's not about whether you have a lot or a little, but it's about being rich primarily towards God and then using other things for ourselves. So I hope that was encouraging to you. This parable challenges me in my daily life, and I hope it does the same for you too.